All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us. As everybody probably knows who has come to any of our recent NursePreneurs live streams, my name is Casey McGovern. I am the Community and Partnerships Specialist at NursePreneurs. I appreciate everyone joining us. I know it's a Monday night at 6 p.m., and so your time's valuable. So thank you. I am here with Nick Signore. He is the founder and owner of MedFit Staffing. Before starting his company, Nick worked for a staffing company for about 7 years, I believe, as both a recruiter and then an account executive. And he and I actually connected because he reached out via one of the NursePreneurs platforms, just because he's been doing it and he learned a lot along the way. I think as he started his staffing company, his healthcare staffing company, and he really reached out because he wanted to give back to people who would be interested in doing it. And we know at NursePreneurs that we have a great audience of nurse entrepreneurs, or at least nurse entrepreneur hopefuls. And healthcare staffing is a really great fit for the nursing community. So Nick is here to shed a little light on some of the things that he wishes he knew when he was starting his company, and to hopefully save you guys, if you're interested in going down that route, a little bit of the pain that comes with learning the lessons the hard way. So with that, I will give it to Nick, and we will just sort of start chatting about some of these things he learned.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, everyone, thank you for joining us. As Casey said, my name is Nick Signore, the founder and owner of MedFit Staffing. We're a fairly new company. I'd say about around 2 years we've been open now. And I would really love to share with everybody what I wish that I knew before actually starting. So, just with these things that I had, made a list of, I think it could help a lot of people to get a better start with less issues in the beginning, and just to have a lot of better of a chance to succeed, rather than just jumping right in, not knowing what to expect. So that's what I was hoping to go over today with you.
Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of being part of some of these communities of whether you're in our community, the NursePreneurs community, as a nurse entrepreneur, or as really any business owner hopeful in any industry. This is sort of the power of networking and joining with like-minded individuals. Is you can learn so much, and really there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. There's no reason at all, right? And sometimes we all get a little stubborn or single-minded about, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it my way. But please learn from other people, because this can literally sometimes save you years and thousands of dollars of mistakes.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's exactly what the goal is here.
Yeah. And I just want to say before Nick starts too, sorry, Nick, I just want to remind everybody that as we're going, we know that sometimes people can't stay for the entire time. So please drop your questions in the comments, and we'll try to get them answered sort of as we go. We'll leave some time at the end for a nice Q&A. But again, I know sometimes people can only join for 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, as they're handling other responsibilities. So drop those questions in.
Absolutely.
Great.
Absolutely. So we're going to go over 5 subjects that I had wish, that I knew more of, or that I even knew about before starting my own staffing agency. And there's no particular order of how important these are. I'd say they're all equally important. But the first one I'd like to kick off with is the name of your company. As a nurse, and turning into an entrepreneur, maybe you already are an entrepreneur, but opening a staffing agency, a healthcare staffing agency, for some reason, a lot of us want to naturally call it, something staffing LLC, or have the word staffing in it. And that's what we did. And the problem that you run into with that is when you go to get insurance, which there's a few categories that insurers they consider high risk. Okay. One of them is construction. Uh, I know either healthcare or construction are one of those two are number one out of all the high risk industries that they have. So staffing is something that insurers do not like. They try to, you know, kind of veer away from dealing with staffing companies, especially construction, but also healthcare staffing. And of course, they're going to know, that you're a healthcare staffing company. But when you have staffing in the name, when you're shopping around for insurers, a lot of them will automatically just say, oh, no way, we're not even going to speak to them. So,
Right.
yeah, so that was probably the first mistake that I made was, doing MedFit Staffing compared to like MedFit Solutions, or Healthcare Solutions, Healthcare National, whatever name you come
Right.
up. That made it very difficult for us to find an insurer, not only for professional, but more so workers' comp. A lot of the companies, the insurance companies that deal with workers' comp wouldn't even take a look at our business plan or even speak to us. They just said no.
Right.
Just
As soon as you type your name into that contact form, you don't
as
even
soon
get a phone call.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And this isn't, I want to make it clear, this isn't to lie or, try and deceive the insurance companies. It's just so you get a fair shot, the same as any other company would. And having that, staffing in your company name, it really hurts. It hurts. So that was one of the things that I wish I had known beforehand. Now, if you're in the case where you already created your company and you're in the beginning stages and you already have staffing in your name, what you could do is you can create a DBA under your LLC. So, say MedFit Staffing, my company, we said, oh, shoot, this is really hurting us. It's becoming an issue. Luckily, we did, find insurers that would cover us and that would work with us. But you could create a DBA, which is doing business as, and come up with another name, such as, MedFit Solutions. So parent company would be the LLC, MedFit Staffing LLC. The DBA, we would be doing business as MedFit Solutions. So that's a solution for if you have already came up with, a name for your company and it has staffing in it already. But if you haven't, try not to include staffing in it. That was one of the points that I wanted to make of a mistake, in my opinion, that we made. So
I like that point. I mean, and again, right, it's not like you said, there's no intention to deceive, but because obviously you're going to get on a phone call with an insurer and you're going to discuss what your business offers, and it's clearly going to be a staffing firm, but it's
right.
not about that. It's about, sometimes it's just like with resumes and with anything. Sometimes you just need to get your foot in the door so that you can
Mhm.
have a conversation with a human. And then they say, all right, I like this guy. Or I like this person. Let's keep moving forward. But
Right.
you might get screened out even through some electronic system if they've typed in some keyword that's now in your business name that they say, screen these ones out, and no
That's
human ever even
exactly
saw it. Yeah.
that's exactly what happens. That
Yeah.
you get because you'll go online and usually you'll use like a broker, an insurance brokerage, that will shop around to hundreds of different insurance companies. So you're exactly right. They'll flag the name, if it has staffing in it, they'll flag it, and they'll automatically say no. So
Yep.
that's a great point there.
Yep.
So out of the 5, that was one of them. Another one, and this one is very important to know early on. You can operate and run your own staffing firm, or agency, however you want to refer to it as, all by yourself at first in the beginning. A lot of people think I need to hire a big team. I need to have someone doing the admin work. I need to have a recruiter. I need to have an account executive to call facilities and get contracts. I need to have someone do payroll. All of that stuff can be taught. You can teach yourself all of that. And when you're small enough, which in the beginning you probably will be, you can do all that stuff yourself. It seems very overwhelming, but it's really not that bad. And what I ended up doing was the opposite. So I started, and I thought I needed to hire, somebody for all of those things, which we did. And what happened was, a lot of them, the mistake I made, a lot of them were not experienced with healthcare staffing. And that's what leads me to the second thing that I wish I knew, the second subject. When you are hiring, and if you are hiring at first, or at all, please make sure that you hire people that have worked in healthcare staffing. It's a very niche business. You could probably get away with an administrator, someone in administration that, does payroll. That's basically it. Taxes, handles your QuickBooks. That maybe you don't need someone who was in the healthcare staffing world before, but to hire somebody who does not have experience right in the beginning, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, because you're going to spend so much time and energy training them on how things are done that it's going to just slow your company down so much in those beginning stages. You'll be spending more time training the people you hire, while you should be focusing on growing your company. So make sure that if you are going to hire people right out of the gate, that they do have at least some experience with healthcare staffing, or if they're a recruiter with some sort of staffing, background. It doesn't necessarily have to be healthcare. I would prefer it to be healthcare, but like I said, it is a niche business. So, and you can find a lot of recruiters, healthcare recruiters and whatnot on, Indeed, Monster, all those job platforms. But that was my second, important subject, is to make sure that they have some background in that.
And I would argue, and maybe, correct me if I'm wrong, Nick, but even just in general, from any small business, especially in the beginning perspective, where you said you don't necessarily need to hire, I think there's probably even some merit in specifically not hiring at first until you feel confident that you know every role that well, right? Because the other thing is, I'm sure there's a piece of this where if you start your company and before you've even learned sort of the ins and outs of a certain role, you've hired someone into that role, and then they start to putting their own spin and putting processes in place. And then, God forbid, you have to let that person go, or they quit, or life circumstances occur that require you to sort of fill in the gap there for a while. You want to know exactly what you're doing in each of the roles in your own company, because you need it as a fallback to be able to keep keep the ship afloat.
Exactly.
Um, so I think, there's merit sort of in being the jack of all trades at the beginning in your own business before you say, okay, I got it now, but I'm ready to hire someone.
Exactly. And you're exactly right. And that was a mistake I made in the beginning. And I had to learn the hard way. And then when I did kind of become a jack of all trades, I realized this isn't so bad at all. To run payroll and to do the recruiting and to do the facility calls and to do all the back end paperwork with I-9s for the government and W-4s and W-2s and all that stuff can be very uh, intimidating, and you've never done it before, especially
For sure.
for a nurse that or anybody, but especially a nurse that's used to taking care of patients and that's been their role, to just dive into something where you're dealing with taxes, insurance, all this new software that you have to
Mhm.
use for scheduling, and it's very overwhelming. So I would recommend to start yourself, and
Yeah.
take gradual little steps. Um, and that's why, as we've discussed about a course briefly, that's why,
Yeah.
you know, in this course that we were planning to offer, um, if you have a timeline of starting your company, say, I want to start my company in 3 months, that's great. But what we would recommend is when you pick out all your software, and you have everything set as far as that goes, you need to learn every role, like we just talked about,
Right.
before you actually hit the ground running and start the company and start staffing. Because the last thing you want to happen is to hire somebody, have them be your first nurse or aide, whatever it may be, and run into an issue where, oh shoot, uh, you can't pay them on time because you made a mistake with payroll. Uh,
Right.
and then now your name gets out there as, oh, that company did, because everyone talks, as
Mhm.
nurses know, everyone talks about the agencies that they work for and that they are working for. There's various different nurses at a facility, for example. They all talk to each other about the agencies they're with, and you don't want to get a bad rep right off, in the beginning, because of
Right.
a mistake you made, just not knowing how to do everything, beforehand. So, I would take the time to know all of that before you actually begin, which can be frustrating.
Yeah, and but I do think, like you said, as long as you continue to take small steps forward and in this business and any new business, you just have to keep moving forward. You don't have to be taking giant leaps every day. I think the
Right.
beauty of, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but another aspect to, as let's say you're a nurse who's interested in entrepreneurship and you're trying to sort of figure out your 3-year plan.
Hmm.
How do I get away from the bedside, for example, within the next 3 years?
Right.
uh, Healthcare staffing agency, you don't have to start huge. You can truly, I mean, yes, there's some upfront investment and to start, learn what you need to learn and start a company and have an LLC and get your insurance and all those things. But you also don't have to necessarily be doing it 100% full time and quit your job tomorrow in order to be successful. You can
No.
run you can have a healthcare staffing agency that you do sort of as a side gig until you've gotten too big to do that, and then you can quit your job.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean?
Hmm. No, you
Yeah.
absolutely can do that. Especially, if you stay under like a threshold of say 10 nurses or aides, mix it up a little bit. Say you have
Right.
5 aides and 5 nurses, such as LPNs, RNs, whatever the case may be. It absolutely could be a side job, while you continue to work at your current job, or whether it's at a hospital or, a clinic, long-term care, whatever the case may be. So that's a great point.
Yeah.
You can do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think that allows people to just take a step back and breathe through some of the overwhelm, because no one is saying that to jump headfirst in, quit all your jobs, and have no income while you try to build this business. That doesn't have to be what it looks like. And I mean, if you have the ability to do that from a financial perspective, good for you. But it doesn't
Mhm.
have to be that way, and it does impact your overwhelm when this isn't, make or break it. I'm not going to be able to put food on my table if I don't figure all this out tomorrow and get it going.
Yeah, and I actually did exactly that. I went into this, my wife wasn't very, she was excited for me, but she was very nervous.
Sure.
Um, she was also pregnant at the time, and I was so confident that this was going to work, and that we were going to do well at it, that I took a stab at it, and I actually didn't have any income or job, or at the time I had quit my job with the staffing agency that I worked for, and I just knew that this is going to work. I'm going to make it work one way or the other, and that's a big reason on why I have these five subjects on things that I wish I knew beforehand, because I did just jump right in, and you know, by the grace of God and the power of uh, being driven, and just not giving up, we are successful now. But it's scary. It's very scary,
Yep.
to do that, to quit, and have that fear of the possibility that you could fail. There's always that possibility, but in order to be successful at anything, you need to overcome that fear and go for it. And if you fail, you fail, but you'll never know if you don't take that leap. So like you said, you could do it one way. You could go part-time into it, and that I think that's a great idea to start that way. Or you could go all in, right in the beginning. And I think the opportunity, or actually not opportunity, but the advantage that nurses have over someone like myself, um, starting a healthcare staffing agency, are the connections that they already have. That right there, would have made me feel much more comfortable, just quitting everything, my job, and putting all my eggs in one basket, so to speak. So nurses, whoever's listening right now, you do have that upper hand compared to somebody who was not a nurse like myself, or you know besides working at a staffing agency, I was not affiliated in healthcare in any way
Yeah,
besides
that makes a big difference.
at that agency. It certainly does.
Yeah,
Uh,
when you really know the ins and outs of roles and hospital operations, and you really can understand it in kind of from a 360-degree perspective.
yeah.
Um, it gives it a lot of authority, and just also, those simple advantages like finding people to hire and finding
Oh,
facilities to use them.
that's actually that's a great point, but that's not simple at all. That's very difficult.
Right.
That's one of the hardest parts. Not so much, for a nurse, like we just said, it may not be as difficult to find other good nurses to work with you. Um, Also, as a nurse, it may not be that difficult to find facilities, but that seems to be what the hardest part was, getting the contracts in the beginning. So if you have connections with that as well, if you know a lot of administrators or director of nursing, um, that's a great advantage to have right there. So
Yep.
you know,
Cool.
take advantage of that. Absolutely. Um, another subject here that people don't generally think of right off the bat. Now, I've owned businesses before. Um, you know, in my early 20s, I was into real estate. I had a small real estate company flipping houses. So I was somewhat familiar with how to start an LLC and insurance and whatnot. But, in real estate, we did a lot of subcontracting. So we didn't need to carry workers' comp because we didn't have direct employees. But um, my third subject here that I want to talk about is workers' comp for a healthcare staffing agency. I mean, that was the most difficult, I think, hurdle to jump out of anything was to find a workers' comp policy that would cover a brand new healthcare staffing agency. We got quotes, um, $100,000 up front. They wanted um, just
What? That's
just to get the
insane.
quote. Oh yeah. So like I said, healthcare is one of those industries that's a high risk industry for insurance. So a lot of nurses get hurt on the job. And as you know, any nurses listening right now, or that listen to this in the future, they'll know. I mean, people hurt their backs. I mean, you're
Hmm.
lifting patients. It can be a pretty, physically demanding job. So it is very risky for an insurer to to give you a workers' comp policy, especially if you're a new staffing agency. So be prepared to go through the state. That's what we had to do. And it still cost us, you know, 50 to $60,000 just to get a policy. And
Yeah.
that was
And
with the state.
And so to be clear, we have a question that I want to go back to. So Nikita, I see you. I'm going to come back to you in just 1 second, but I want to finish this thought. But to be clear, Nick, then, because some people may not realize this, and maybe I'm one of those people because I was never an agency nurse. I've always
Yeah,
been like company employed or hospital employed. But so to be clear, as a staffing agency or a staffing firm, the nurses that they may be working for X facility, but it's you, the agency, whose workman's comp is going to cover them for the injury and not necessarily the hospital where they're currently contracted, correct?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I just want to clarify that because I think maybe I'm not the only one, or maybe I am the only one, but I think probably other people are like, oh, just realizing that as well. Because honestly, I wouldn't have thought of that. I would have thought that the hospital that would fall under the hospital, the facilities sort of jurisdiction.
Right, right. A lot of people do think that, and that would make sense. But that is why, if you think about it, that's a big reason on why facilities are using agencies
Right.
because they don't have to
Very.
insure them with their professional liability insurance. They don't have to cover them with workers' comp.
Right.
They don't have to pay payroll taxes.
Right.
So, yes, the staffing agency does have to cover all of those things.
Yeah.
Uh, yes,
That would even
absolutely.
be an interesting whole other live stream, Nick, is to say like, here are all the benefits um, that you as a healthcare staffing firm offer to a hospital and why they might want to use you just from a marketing perspective. And
Absolutely.
by the way, that actually segues well into the question we had. Nikita asked, what advice can you provide for how to approach a facility? Like, how are you marketing a facility? Are you cold calling? What are you doing?
So it's a mixture of, you do some cold calling, especially at first. what I would recommend, if you're a nurse, try, the best avenue that I would recommend going down is try and go through your network of people that um, who may know an administrator or a director of nursing, or ask around to your friends who are nurses as well, on which facility that you work at, under an agency, which facilities need the most help. um, you know which facilities are the most understaffed. That's one way you can do it. And a lot of our nurses tell us, and then we'll call that facility and say, hey, so and so worked at your facility. They let us know that you need some help. You may need some help, and we want to be there for you. And that's when you get into, what your staffing agency, um, what may set your staffing agency apart from others. And you go into your spiel on why you're different from other staffing agencies. But a great way to answer that question also would be to look on Indeed, look on these job platforms, and see what facilities are hiring. Because a lot of these healthcare facilities, if they need, nurses, they're on Indeed as well, or ZipRecruiter, or face social media. They're trying to hire LPNs, RNs, CNAs. So that's another tactic that we use. We go on these job platforms, we sort of see, which facility or facilities are on here the most. We'll call them and say, hey, it looks like you're looking to hire 6 LPNs with a $10,000 signing bonus. How about we save you the $60,000 and you go with us, as a staffing agency, and we can send them over to you tomorrow. That's a great way of, I'm sorry about that. That's a great way to get facilities.
I love
Another,
that.
what's that?
I love that. It's just, you have to be creative that way. And I mean, it's
You do.
just, yeah, that's just a super smart way to be sort of keeping, watching, what's the word? I don't know. Great way to be watching the market, though.
It
That's the
is.
saying I was looking for there, but I couldn't find it in my head there.
Yeah. No, well, that happens to me every day, so don't feel bad. Um, but also she mentioned, what was her name? Nika?
Nikita.
Nikita. So you mentioned cold calling, I believe. That's also a large part of it too, though. So there is going to be a lot of cold calling. You will get hung up on. So, when you're starting out on your own, uh, cold calling is not for everyone. It wasn't for me at first, but once you start doing it, that's something you kind of just you have to do it. You have to just dive in and try again. And you get hung up on, okay, call the next one. You'll make 100 phone calls, you may only have 3 conversations, and you may not get a contract out of those 3 conversations. But you know what? The next day you pick up the phone, you'll make another 100 phone calls, you'll get another few conversations. One of those may lead to a contract. That is persistency. Uh, Being persistent and also consistent with that as well. Um, with the cold calling, I know it stinks. Cold calling is really tough. But there are scripts that we use, that have talking points, and what to say, and how what kind of tone of voice you're going to use, how to start the conversation, all sorts of stuff like that. That is very difficult to just jump into with no experience. So that's something that we provide to that's what we call an account executive, somebody who makes the facility calls. And I'd say 80% of them are cold calls. So we handle those with scripts that we have already written out that we provide to our account execs. And then, networking through people that once you get your first facility, typically each facility, 85, 90% of the time, they'll have a sister facility. They'll have, a company that owns them, and that company will have other facilities. So that right there is a great way to move on to your next facility to call. Hey, this is so and so with MedFit Staffing. We actually just got a contract with, we'll call it ABC Nursing Home over in, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We were wondering, since we're in the same area as you, would you like to sign on with us too? Since both of the nursing homes are in, somewhat of a similar area, it makes sense that we staff your facility as well. And you're owned by the same parent company. And, that it gives you an in. So you're not so much cold calling. You know what I mean? It's something to talk about. We're staffing that facility as well. So, Barbara down over at ABC Nursing Home, we had a great conversation. She mentioned that you guys may need some help as well. So once you get one facility contract, I think the rest start to come a bit easier. So
And
I hope that answered her question a little bit.
I would even say, Nikita, if you're still watching too, and some of these concepts apply, regardless to your business. One thing I think as nurses and nurse entrepreneurs that we are not necessarily, and I'm speaking in generalities, right? There's exceptions to every rule, but we're not necessarily really great at tooting our own horns, right? Like we're nurses and nurse practitioners and healthcare providers in general. We do some really hard things. Well, first of all, you made it through your educational program, right? So check, you did that. Then you passed whatever exam you needed to pass. Probably was not easy. Check, you did that. Then you walked into the unit for the first time and you started having to put on, hit an IV on, a guy flailing around because he's delirious or whatever it is. You just kept doing hard things, right? So we're pretty impressive people, if I can say that in general about our profession. But then if you say to you ask someone to talk about themselves and to say, what are you really good at as a nurse? Everybody clams up. And really cold calling is it's hard because we're getting on there to say, here's why I'm awesome. Really, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what you're doing. You're selling yourself. Here's why I'm awesome. And here's why you should like me. A lot of people just freak out about that because there's stigma around it, because society has told us to be humble, because blah, 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 blah. You do get better at it. You really do. And really it's the same as even getting on these live streams. When I first started with NursePreneurs, like I'm in front of people talking, sometimes having to wing conversations. And sometimes, you need to be on your toes and be able to sort of pivot or deal with sort of an uncomfortable silence or whatever. All of those things come easier and easier. And it's the same with cold calling. There's a lot of the same concepts that you can pull out there. But I think the crux of it is that you do have to get comfortable saying, here's what I do, here's what I offer you, and here's why I'm your person. Here's why I'm awesome at it. And you have to get comfortable with it to start doing it. If you're even, if you're an IV hydration nurse and you're marketing, you're having to tell people why you're better than the one next door. If you're a concierge nurse, if you are starting a direct primary care, all of it, your marketing is all sort of the same, whether it's cold calls or advertisements or walking into a facility down the street to tell them what you could offer their patients as a supplementary service. You just got to be, you have to own what you're great at.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, so anyway, that's my little bit of unsolicited advice on approaching facilities and cold calling and all of that.
Yep. And if I may piggyback off of that, once you start, making those cold calls, you will get more comfortable with it. And that confidence that you build up, people can just smell it through the phone. It's very odd, but they can tell, that you've done this before. You know what you're talking about. And being a nurse already, I mean, you really do have the upper hand there.
Right.
Because you're speaking to usually a director of nursing, before you speak with the admin. Or even if you're speaking directly with the admin at first, I mean, you're going to know what they need and what other agencies aren't doing so well, that maybe your facility can do a little bit better.
Right.
So, yeah.
And the other thing I'll say about it is that you do have to, one, like Nick said, you're going to get a lot of either no conversation at all or a lot of no's, and that's cool. Like, you really have to adopt an okay attitude. Like, no's are okay because you learned something from the no. They're all just another step. You're going to get 100 no's and then a yes. Fine.
Yep.
You just have to be okay with that and gracious when you receive them and not sort of then clam up and panic. And you also, the other thing I would say too, is like related to what Nick said about maybe there's a sister company, is being comfortable saying, hey, do you have a contact here? Hey, would you be willing to, if, especially after you've offered someone great value and done a great job for their facility, for example, then saying and asking, would you be willing to make an email introduction to, somebody at your sister facility that I can speak with, directly, or whatever. You need to get comfortable asking those questions, because most of the time people will say yes. They just don't think of it off the top of their own head. But if you say, I'd love to get an email introduction, do you know someone there? And they'll be like, oh yeah, sure.
Yep.
Right. You just have to be okay asking.
That's funny you say that, because when I worked at the staffing company that I was employed with years ago, that was one of the ways that I got, my first few facilities. Initially, after the first one I ever got, exactly what Casey just said and explained was how I got my next three. I just asked, I asked, would you be okay introducing me to the administrators at your three sister facilities? And that's exactly what they did. And we got the contracts.
Yeah.
So,
and if you hadn't asked, they may not have just volunteered that to you.
they wouldn't have.
Right. You just had to ask.
Absolutely.
Done.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Casey, everybody, that we're working with in business, we're all humans. We all have the same emotions. We all love, we all, sometimes feel anger. We all have bad days. We all have good days. So, if you get hung up on, it's no big deal. Some people will be very nice to you and say, call us back in a month. We just don't need anybody right now. And that's a good thing for them. We want these healthcare facilities to be staffed, because we want to help. That's our goal in starting the staffing agency. Obviously, we want to make money, yes, as a business, but we want to help people and give back and make sure that these patients don't have a shortage in nurses and a shortage in continuity of care. That's a big deal. So
absolutely,
we want to make sure that we're helping as much as we can. So I know we're running a little short on time, so I'm going to go to another couple of points here that I wish I knew. let's see. There's two more. I think we went over three. There's two more. This one I would say is also, I keep saying this, that this is the most important one, or one of the most important one. This one will make or break your company. Okay. Choosing the right software, because nowadays staffing companies, most of them they're ran remotely. A lot of the bigger ones, like that are nationwide, like IntelliCare and staffing companies like that size. Of course, they have an office. We have an office, but we don't use it much. They have multiple offices, but when you begin, this is going to be ran remote. And even if you had an office, the software is key. You need to have the correct software, and you need to have software that works smoothly with all the other software that you have for other things. You want to have something that, can work well with payroll and invoicing and scheduling, and your internal team once you hire other people internally for your company. That is so important for your workflow. I mean, it could make the biggest difference between succeeding and failing, in my opinion, is having the right software. So
I,
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I can kind of imagine that, especially, where with NursePreneurs, we're a remote company as well. And just in any remote role, right, there's been a big learning curve with that. And if Katie were on this, she would say the same, like, man, and sometimes you build out an entire sort of quote infrastructure on one software, and then you get to the point where you're like, this is
Yep.
not working. And
Yep.
now to migrate your entire business and its workflow to some other software, I mean, the cost there and what you can lose, and it's not worth it. I love that you're talking about, taking your time and investing in and thinking through the right software, because
Oh my goodness.
I mean, it's literally, that's your company, right? I mean, that is your business.
Yeah. Trial and error is what happened with us in the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean,
Sure,
we
that was
went through,
brutal.
it was brutal. We went through so many different software companies and programs that we tried using, and we were so excited we finally found the one, and then we find out, like, oh, but it doesn't integrate with the payroll that we're using, or it doesn't
Right.
allow you to. That's the thing with healthcare staffing. It's such a niche industry that, a lot of the staffing software out there does not tailor to healthcare staffing, because for example, a nurse may go to 4 different facilities. She may work at, more than 1 or 2 different facilities. So you have to have certain pay rates for those facilities, or, just little things like that. We found that most software it just didn't work. It didn't have the capabilities, that we needed in order to do healthcare staffing. So that's another thing in the course is, that we're going to offer is the correct software right off the bat. So you don't have to worry about that. It took us about 4 or 5 months to get all of the right software to work, seamlessly with one another, and for us to have a almost perfect workflow, and that's when we really could hit the ground running, was when we had the software that worked and did everything we needed it to. So
Right. And I'm sure during that process, there was some money that essentially was lost, just
there
lost
was.
to it. Right. And then also some revenue that you just weren't able to obtain because your processes were still not perfect because of
Yep.
software trial and error.
Yep.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep. There was, I mean, with healthcare staffing, you need a a I'm sorry, ATS, applicant tracking system, a CRM. There's so many different softwares that you need. You need payroll, you need scheduling. So we found like an all-in-one. We got really lucky and found something that just did everything. And it actually was created for healthcare staffing. So it ended up being perfect. Almost perfect. There's always something you wish that, may work a little bit better, but for the most part, we found the perfect software for healthcare staffing. So it took us 5 months and quite a few $1,000s,
Yeah.
later, but we found it and it works great. So, you
So
know,
we had two questions related to that, and then we'll get to point number 5 because we ended up being long-winded. Apparently, we both had a lot to say,
yeah, yeah.
but someone asked, and whether you're willing to share or not, what software you're using.
That we will be offering in our course. I mean, I don't want to give away our company secrets. In fact, a lot of companies will not give away what software they use. It's kind of like a weird trade secret that, if I asked a competitive company, staffing company, hey, what software do you guys use? Which I did, by the way, try doing. They wouldn't tell us. But I will
Interesting.
tell you uh, one of them, an applicant tracking system that works the best. One of them is called Crelate. Crelate works great for
Crelate.
Crelate. It's spelled Crelate. That is what we use for an ATS. That's an applicant tracking system. So, keeping track of all of the candidates and nurses, and it allows you to link what's called Ring Central. We use that. But kind of like the motherboard software that we have, that's something that we'll be giving away in our course that we're going to be offering. But those two are also very good software companies that we use. Crelate took us a while to find, and we spent a lot of money before we did find Crelate. So that's a great one to know up front. Ring Central, that's a cloud-based communications software. So that enables you to basically have another phone number and a whole phone system for your entire team, for your company. It allows you to get faxes. It allows you to have a 1-800 number. It has, automated messaging that sounds, very professional for each. It gives you each employee that your company has, gives them an extension. It's very nice. It's very nice. So
Um, Awesome. And then someone else just asked, how did you implement or how did you integrate all your software? Did you hire someone to do that, or did you just figure that out on your
that
own?
that was part of the, remember I mentioned it took us about 5 months to that's a great
Figure it
question,
out.
by the way. That was one of the main problems is, we'd find something great, but it wouldn't integrate with, the scheduling software that we needed. Nothing would integrate that, that we needed. So, it was trial and error. Crelate, I will say, integrates with a lot of great systems, Ring Central being one of them. So, um, the only issue is, the next one is going to be your scheduling software, which kind of ties into your payroll. You want that to tie into payroll, and all the hours and timekeeping, clocking in, clocking out, timesheets, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
that's
So
the
it's,
hard part, is making
yeah,
sure
it's
that,
a robust sort of software infrastructure that you need when you're starting a staffing agency.
yeah, yeah, yes,
Um, that's a little bit, it's intricate compared to what some other remote companies may need because of the nature of the beast, really, because of the
yeah,
way that you are,
it's
you have your
extremely good.
right, you have your internal um, employees, and then you have your agency nurses or healthcare, whatever techs or whoever they are. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, 6:55. So I think we have just enough time to get to number 5, Nick.
good, great, okay. So this one is also very important, like I said, for every one of them. Um, when you do get your first facility, now you're naturally going to want to, I don't want to say undercut the other agencies with your rates, but you're going to want to have competitive rates when you first start, because no one knows you yet. None of the facilities have heard of you. None of the nurses have heard of you. So naturally, you're going to want to, you know, have lower rates to be more attractive to these facilities so you can get a contract right away. Um, don't go too low. Don't go, know what the market rates are and take into account of all of your operating costs. Okay. But don't forget about your taxes, your payroll taxes. Don't forget about your insurance. Okay, your workers' comp is going to be through the roof your first year. So don't, undersell yourself when you're first making these calls, okay? Especially being a nurse. Like I said many times, you already have an upper hand. You know what these facilities, these healthcare facilities, what they need and what they want. And how to be a great nurse and how to find other great nurses. So that's a great selling point right there as it is. So, I mean, don't lower your rates too much, because it's really gonna shoot yourself in the foot in the long run. We did that with one of our facilities in the beginning, and you know, just to get a contract, and we realized that, you know what, we definitely could have, you know, went a few dollars higher and they still would have signed with us. So,
Right.
don't think because you're not getting a contract in the first week or two, oh, I need to lower my rates. I need to be more competitive with my rates. That's typically not the issue. So, know what the market rates are. Definitely do that research and know what other agencies are charging for an hourly rate for, your CNAs, LPNs, RNs, RN supervisors. If you're going in the long-term care, direction, if you're doing hospitals, same thing. Know what all the rates are that agencies are charging, and maybe beat it by a few dollars, like literally $2 or $3, but don't go you know too low, because you're just gonna hurt yourself in the long run. It's very tempting to do
Hmm.
that. It's tempting to just really undercut and come in there and say, we can do $10 lower per hour. Don't do it. um just don't do it. First of
Right.
all, it's there, there's no need to. Second of all, it's just going to hurt you in the long run, and in the short term as well.
Right. You don't want to have your company running in, the red, and you're struggling to make all your payments on all of your, like you
Yeah,
said, the taxes and your premiums and your operating costs in general and your staff. If you already do have employees, you got to pay them and you've got to pay the nurse and all of it.
exactly. exactly.
But also I think that's another, just to sort of wrap it up here, that's another part of what we were talking about in terms of a lot of this being a confidence game.
Hmm.
Um, it's also probably okay in the beginning to say, no, I mean, I tried, but I'm going to walk away from this because, like you said, you know, accepting a contract at a rate that's below what you really need to run your company doesn't do you any favors. And
No,
having the confidence to say, all right, I'm going to move on here and
yeah,
stop dumping time into this because we're not meeting at a rate that's acceptable. Move on.
yeah,
It's okay to do. And it hurts sometimes, like you said,
it
when
does.
you're in the early days and you just want that contract because for
Mhm.
whatever reason, it feels like a security blanket.
Yes,
It's okay. It's
absolutely.
okay to just keep trudging through and work towards the next one.
You're absolutely right. It does hurt because I had to do it myself. Even recently, we got a contract that a facility was willing to sign, but the numbers just didn't work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we couldn't come to an agreement. So you just have to keep on going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, we've definitely pushed it all the way to the end here to talk about that stuff, but I loved that. There was a lot of awesome points, Nick. Thank you for coming and talking through that. I think we'll try to do this again and sort of get some more stuff, get some more topics in here about starting a healthcare staffing firm and maybe even talking about some of the more of the benefits, more of sort of the reasons that it makes sense for a nurse in particular to do that.
Yeah.
Um, Anybody, I know like I said, we ran overtime a little bit. I am going to put my name in the chat. This is how you would find me in our NursePreneurs Facebook community, if I can spell my own name. So if you have questions, you could tag me, throw questions my way. I can get you connected with Nick.
Yes.
If you want
Absolutely.
to check out Nick's website, just to kind of peruse, it's medfitstaffing.com, right, Nick?
Correct.
All right, I'm
Yes.
putting that in there too. But again, if you have questions and things come up after the live stream, please feel free to tag me in the NursePreneurs community Facebook and I can get you connected with Nick to get some answers. And we'll hopefully look forward to doing some more like this in the future.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. All right, everyone, have a great night.